Okay, so it's like 2 minutes after 11, so I think we're going to get started in as respect to everybody's time, and we've got just an hour, which last time it went really, really quickly. So good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. We're excited to have you join us for an in-depth discussion on navigating critical aspects of the cannabis industry with insights from top experts in insurance, tax and accounting, banking, and payments. Today, we're going to cover a wide range of topics designed to help cannabis businesses optimize your operations and mitigate risk. First, we'll explore insurance essentials, from cyber liability to the importance of directors and officers insurance when raising capital. Then we're going to dive into key year-end tax and accounting considerations to ensure that your business is prepared for success in 2025 and beyond. And finally, we're going to discuss innovative banking and payment solutions that can streamline your operations and improve cash flow with tools like GBX Merchant Pay. We're thrilled to have such a knowledgeable panel of speakers with us today, including Corey Tobin from Symphony Risk, a cannabis insurance professional, Bruce Anderson from BTA, an expert CPA in the cannabis space and other spaces as well, and Lauren Murphy, Greenbax Strategic Director and an expert in banking and payments. And I'm Carol McCormick, president of Greenbax Marketplace, and I'll serve as today's moderator. I really appreciate you joining us, so let's get started. Corey, let's start with you. Why don't you give us just a little bit of an overview of kind of the key things that you think that all cannabis operators need to be thinking about when it comes to the risk and liability. Maybe start with cyber. That seems to be in the news a lot these days.
Yeah, that one. So cyber liability has been getting a lot of steam right now because there's a big stizzy breach that is out there, and that's trickling down to every business, not just them. It's through the folks in the supply chain that will be affected by it. So cyber liability is a big one. Then you have your generic ones that you have to have: general liability, products liability, which those are usually rated based off of square footage or sales. So it kind of works with the size of the company. But in property, you need to have these coverages in place that are very basic. Now, at least one part-time employee, you have to have workers' comp on the West Coast in California. Other states aren't the same. So that is something you have to have. One big item that I'll jump to directors and officers, is most businesses that are in the startup phase in the cannabis space overlook directors and officers. But it's very important to get directors and officers if you're going out on a road show, so to speak, to raise capital for your business, because you want those road show activities to be covered on your directors and officers policy. So while you're raising capital, what you're presenting to the audiences and the public is something very important. Those are just a few to touch on coverages, and based off size of company, you can manage the risk what you can afford on coverage wise on which segments of the business you want to cover.
Thank you. All right, Bruce, let's jump to you for some kind of areas, what you would consider areas of opportunity in January. So on our last webinar, you were talking about getting ready. We were in December, so we're talking about year end. Now we're in January. What advice would you want to make sure that our participants understand for getting ready for 2025 to be a successful year?
Sure. So what's interesting about January is it is after the end of the year, but it is the time in which we go through the process of getting all the fourth quarter filings taken care of and some annual filings. And so this is where if you do your good job at reconciling payroll, sales, and excise tax, then those things then will yield good solid reporting for the year. For example, with payroll, you've got 3 quarters. Okay, great. So those are done with. Fourth quarter is now in your hand. You get those filed in January. Oh my God, look there's a little boo-boo. We had a little hiccup somewhere along the line. So therefore, let's go ahead and rather than go back and have to redo 3 quarters worth of stuff because it was just this problem that you had throughout, let's go ahead and put it in the fourth quarter, get it cleaned up. So therefore, when your W-2s get punched out, they're all nice and clean. Sales is a biggie because it kind of goes through a lot of different touches. Could have state and local taxes that are sales tax related, and also income tax. They all have to tie out. So same drill as with payroll. Let's go ahead and get that fourth quarter squared away so that it all ties out correctly. These are the biggies. And of course, the hub to all this is making sure that you have an accounting system that is capturing all this stuff. And at the base root, you're going to be reconciling your cash, which of course is dependent upon where your bank accounts are located. And do you have good enough information coming out? Can you determine if you've got electronic payments or manual checks and so forth? And so that's where this is a shameless plug, of course, for GBX, but that's where, you know, the banking is really a huge issue for accountants, where can we just get it right, and can we get it so that we have good information first time through?
Well, thank you. And that's a great segue. I'll turn it over to Lauren then to talk about Greenbax banking services, and just a high level overview, Lauren, of what we offer today.
Yeah, sure. So Greenbax, as most of us, I hope, know on this call, we do offer banking services to the cannabis industry for your direct license holders, ancillaries, CBD companies as well. And we definitely have very affordable rates, but we want to bring as much value as we can, which is also why we launched GBX Merchant Pay, so that we can provide electronic payments for you to do commerce, whether it's collecting payment from customers or collecting payments from other businesses. We really want to bring that value to you and ensure more safety in the transaction, and then helping you have a place to bank your funds safely.
Yes, we do. Thank you for that. All right, Corey, let's talk about like one of your subjects was new markets and policies. So adapting to startup midsize. Can you just kind of talk about different needs depending on the size of an organization, and what, from an insurance standpoint, what the recommendations are for the different size companies?
Yeah, so from a startup perspective, it's in the cannabis space, everything takes a lot longer than anticipated with regulations from a local standpoint and a state standpoint. So if you're going to raise capital, absolutely directors and officers should be top of the list to protect the directors and officers and their personal assets. That's what it would do, side A, B, and C coverage. And it's very important to have that. Now, from just like a minimum essential type of coverage, general liability, if they have products liability, it's very important, in workers' comp and property. So we find a lot of times there will be companies that want everything under the sun, but in startup mode, there's only a couple things that you really need to get through the licensing, or just as a startup. Now, if you have a manufacturing agreement or a licensing agreement or an MSA, you know, that changes the conversation piece a little bit as well. So you got to keep that in mind. But very basics coverage for startups: general liability, products liability, property, and workers' comp. That's a good area. Directors and officers, depending on the risk appetite of the owners. Now, if you're a very well-established company, I would absolutely look at, you know, directors and officers, employment practices liability. If they have their own 401k in place, then you need to look at different coverages from a fiduciary standpoint. But there's a lot: cyber liability, workers' comp, product liability, excess liability. There's a lot of different coverages so that you should be entertaining as a well-established large organization to protect the balance sheet and the officers. It just really depends on the risk appetite, but also owners that have been through an issue when it comes to claims, they tend to like the robust coverages than folks that have not been through a claim. It's kind of, you don't want to be in the claim situation, but when a claim happens, you want the coverage to take place.
Yeah. Corey, I remember you talking about how a lot of cannabis operators aren't aware that they can actually get product insurance, crop insurance. Can you just kind of talk about that a little bit? Because I remember you explained to me, this is a while ago, that how risky it is for accounts not to understand that companies can have that, and just what the downside is if they don't. Can you just maybe speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, great question. So there are a number of coverages, including crop, including display coverage, which is one that is missed all the time, because a lot of these carriers will have different warranties and subjectivities on their policies. For example, they'll give you up to 25% of your inventory on display in your retail shop. Well, they forget to leave out co-insurance and everything else that you have to comply with to meet those requirements. So it's very important to be with a carrier and a broker that understands your business. And a lot of times we find it being less expensive than the normal market, because you're really underwriting what your risk is versus just bundling everything together. So crop insurance is a good example. You underwrite it based off of the value of that product and the stages it is in that grow cycle. And that gives you, in the event of theft or anything along those lines, or a fire that occurs, to cover that product. Now, it's not like the federal crop program. That's different. This is from private insurance carriers, but it's there. It provides the coverage. It provides equipment breakdown coverage and so on for these products.
Thank you. And I should let everybody know that there is at the in the Zoom, that's what we're using for the webinar, there is a Q&A button at the bottom. Feel free to put questions in that you have for anybody on the panel today, and we'll catch up with those as we get towards the end. So Bruce, I hope I'm not going to put you on the spot here too much, but yesterday Bruce and I were on a call with a client of his who's also now a mutual client of Greenbax. And I was introducing Bruce to the chief lending officer at North Bay Credit Union. North Bay Credit Union is who owns Greenbax Marketplace. And so when we have a lending opportunity, I pull in our lending officer from North Bay. And one of the things that really struck me yesterday, Bruce, I like, it was so, the difference of having your client on a call with us, and we were talking about refinancing their business, and this operator was so organized. I mean, there wasn't one question that the lending officer asked him that he didn't have, and he really gave Bruce credit for that, because he said that as the operator, that he's the one that works with Bruce on his taxes, on his financials. He really understands the drivers of his business. And we've seen the opposite of that sometimes, where people, we get a new account and we're asking them, we have to get onboarding information. And one of the things that we look at is obviously sales. Our job at Greenbax and at North Bay is to make sure that we have a compliant cannabis program. A part of that is to make sure we can demonstrate, we know that funds coming into the financial institution are coming from legal cannabis sales. And so sometimes we get new accounts, startups that really don't have the infrastructure yet. And so Bruce, I thought maybe it was so impressive to me, because I've seen the opposite of that, where people don't have documents together. Maybe you could just talk about your approach when you get a new client and they need your tax and accounting expertise in getting them set up. How do you help them get organized and prepared? How do you work with a new customer?
Oh, this is great. And I'm giggling because he is probably one of the sharpest guys in the industry.
Yeah.
And he's a micromanager. So that's also a little dimension you have to take into place. And the first meeting I had with him, you guys will get a kick out of this. He brings his business manager. And of course, in LA, we're used to business managers that handle the movie stars and all that. No, this guy is a really sharp guy who really looks at the business side of things. So the first thing that happened is the guy comes in, he opens up his portfolio, and he says, I just want to have you help me understand this case. And so it was a cannabis, tax case. And so he goes through and he does this dissertation thing and so on and so forth. And I said, well, I really appreciate you doing that research. And I'm really sorry to say that you got the wrong part of the industry. I said, what you have here, what we're talking about is with our prospective new client for me, he's a cultivator guy. And what you brought up was a retail shop with some additional dimensions to it. So I said, you're off. And so then I decided, screw it, I've got him going. So let me just go ahead and pound on him a little bit. And so that was the beginning of our relationship in 2018, which is when the retail cannabis came about. So then he said, okay, fine. So then he gives me this diagram, which has all these things on it. And so we have about 7 instances of accounting records for this particular client. Why is that? Because he has 7 EINs. He has different things that he's doing. He has an activity for the leasing, so social equity. So therefore we have some special provisions we do for that thing. He's got his payroll held outside of his core business. Why is that? Because of the potential for having to have the labor union come in and handle the situation. So as a cultivator, there's some special provisions we can get around. So we basically took that piece of paper and we said, okay, so we're going to put you on an accounting platform that fits you. And so we put him on a desktop QuickBooks as opposed to QuickBooks Online, which is, easy because it only costs you $50 a month. Mm-hmm. And we worked on the core business. And then we said, what else are you doing? And he said, I got a spreadsheet for this one. I said, basically everything goes into QuickBooks. We have a separate instance for every company. And so we started off with that premise. And he decided, I'm going to do the bookkeeping thing. And you heard him yesterday say, I'm still doing the bookkeeping. And it's getting a lot easier because all the bank is all connected and so forth. But from a standpoint of how we do our year-end work, we do it by looking at the intercompany things because we have everything on QuickBooks. So therefore, the receivables on one thing or the payables on the other, and so forth. And every year then, and this is with every client I have, I start off with, here's a piece of paper, and we're going to put a line down the middle of it. It might be to one side or the other, but effectively the middle. And I'm going to write down everything that has to do with doing a good job for your accounting. So we get to the end of the year, we have everything. And it's either a you or a me that's going to take care of this. A you is going to be, it's yours. We're going to help staff if you like, but those are your responsibilities. If it ends up that it's a me, then it's either me or my staff will be responsible for those pieces. And we have proceeded with that as our starter. Then every year I say to him, what's new this year? And I give him a forecast. I say, look, we got all the basic bookkeeping done. So now what we're going to take a look at is some intercompany things and so forth. And we layer it year upon year because we don't want to move too fast because accounting doesn't drive the business in many respects. It's a cost center until we become smart enough to turn it into a profit center. And so we're now a few years down the line, and this year is going to be where we're going to enhance his management accounting, because we actually have him where he's making half a dozen products, and we actually have bills of material for his products. Okay, so he's able to, and he did this a couple of years ago. This is not a new thing for the bills of material, but it's been enhanced year by year. But he has gone outside to say, look, if I make this product with this third party that can I can give him the raw material because I grow, but he's going to give me back the finished products, either jarred or pre-rolls or whatever it may be, because that'll get all that labor out of my shop and over somewhere else. And he's able to come back and say, Bruce had this great meeting and we're going to keep it in-house. I said, why is that? He says, because it isn't profitable for me to take it out. Okay. And with that particular client, I meet with him every week. Now, is that a big deal? Well, for him it is, because I'm his CFO without me saying I'm his CFO, because that's a precious thing. I try to explain to him what a CFO does. And I say, I'm not there yet. You're not opening up to all this stuff. So I'm kind of like your top accounting jock, if you will, but I'm functioning as a CFO. We ought to meet every week. He says, that's what we're going to do.
And Bruce, that is one of the roles that you do offer, right? Is like you are an acting CFO for other clients, correct?
I've spent years doing it.
Yeah.
And so therefore on my website, cannabiscpa.com, so I'm sorry, boy, that's a good one. Cannabiscpa.tax.
Yeah.
There's a whole section on CFO kinds of things.
Okay.
And there's about a dozen. And when I have somebody come in and say, wow, what do you do as a CFO? I say, go to my website, choose 2 or 3 things that you think are pretty cool. That's what we'll focus on. And I said, if you stay with me long enough, we work together long enough before you sell your business or retire, we'll get to all of them eventually.
Nice. All right, Miss Lauren, let's talk about why we launched Merchant Pay. What was our strategic focus on doing that? What were we hoping to help in the cannabis space? So maybe just like a high level overview of what the product is and how it works.
Sure. So I'll dive into a high level overview first, which is it's kind of like Venmo for cannabis is where we started, where it really is a payment application. Customers link their bank, they can pay at a dispensary online or delivery purchases. And that's the industry, that went from ACH, cash, and then cashless ATMs, credit cards come and go. But really within the last 6 months, it's been very volatile, anything related to a card. So we did see that strategy point where we need to have a reliable solution, and even better, let's pair it with banking. So we had that opportunity to build that service, and then we realized as well, we pay bills and collect payments from people. We know cannabis businesses do that as well, and you don't want to always have to rely on cash or checks. And I know from being a startup business owner previously, I'm always going to pay the most inconvenient bill last. So we want to provide a convenient way for businesses to pay as well. Send a payment request or do any sort of an auto debit subscription. We can do all of that on our platform. Really, we just want to bring convenience to the cannabis industry as well as safety. And our platform in itself provides more efficiency for them.
And we're integrating with many of the top point of sale companies. We have so many integrations going on right now, and we're really excited about that. What that allows us to do is then through their merchants using their point of sale companies, then they're automatically have Greenbax Merchant Pay as behind it, basically making sure that the payments are going through. Because we're owned by North Bay Credit Union, we are able to go directly to the Fed, and we process these payments directly with the Federal Reserve. And so there's nobody sitting between our customers and getting payments out through the Federal Reserve and back around, which is a huge advantage. And Lauren mentioned safety, and that's really true. It's also a way to reduce cash, because when you're sitting on cash in a dispensary, you've got safety concerns, you've got to get the cash picked up, there's costs associated with that. So for the right merchant, kind of paying attention to all of that, it's a way to save money and also make their location safer and for their employees and their customers. So if you have questions about that, at the end of the webinar, we will be forwarding the recording of this. We'll provide contact information and for everybody that is here today. So feel free to reach out if you have any questions.
Carol, with regards to cash in the dispensaries, can you hook up to the smart safes?
Yes, absolutely. So we have providers all across the country. We're able to provide our banking services to any licensed operator in any legal state in the United States. And so we send the armored car transport out to pick up the cash and take it back to the closest Federal Reserve, and then it's accredited to the account. But for some people, a smart safe makes the best decision, because especially if they're located in a remote area, it's more expensive for the armored car companies to get there. So having a smart safe can protect you longer. You can also get access to your funds through something called provisional credit. So we've seen an uptick in that, Bruce. I think as some of the accounts have gotten larger, and it just makes more sense for them to install those. And so we definitely support smart safes.
Can I make just a couple quick comments from the street?
Yeah, please.
So it's been fascinating where I have clients of different skill sets and business backgrounds and business acumen and so forth. And so I literally always bring up the smart safe issue. And so now what is a smart safe concept? Basically, it's that you put the money into that safe, and if you guys, anybody around a 7-Eleven, that's really the big company in the commercial market that has really done the greatest with these. They put the money in that smart safe, and you can't get it out other than a bona fide picker-upper guy, okay, armored car guy. And yet what happens is that, depending upon how the bank works, you're probably going to get credit like the next day. And so therefore you have this money accumulate in this smart safe, and then it is this issue which Carol brought up, which is that provisional value to that and to the amount of money in that safe. And so now I'm working with this other client a while ago, and I said, okay, so how do you determine how big that safe goes? And he goes, well, how much do you put in, and then how long is your provisional credit for? And I said, I don't know. Let me ask. Those are good questions. So with these smart safes, you can say, look, don't put in dollars and $5 and $20 bills. Only put the big stuff in. Okay, so that's and then the guys that understand how, and guys is a generic neutral term. When the guys figure out how big those safes are, then they put that into consideration for what your total sales are, how much is going to go in there. And so I've had some people that can go for 3 weeks and 4 weeks of once a month pickup for their cash, because they have all the 1s and 5s and 10s and 20s that they keep out. They put in the big bills, and basically it accumulates properly, and then they have less pickup, less disruption from that standpoint, but get the credit at the bank. And the safety thing is outrageous. I mean, I hate to say this, but I have a client that this past week had $89,000 disappear. And I'm trying to do the ROI on that to say, gosh, how much does a smart safe cost? And how well would you have been ahead of the game if you would have had a smart safe arrangement?
Well, that sounds pretty.
I'm a huge fan of the smart safe.
Well, that's awesome. I'm glad you brought it up. Corey, you got to have an opinion about smart safes and is it okay to tell everybody, besides being an insurance professional executive, that you're actually an operator as well, so that you are on both sides of this
Correct.
business?
Yeah, and I'm a huge fan of smart safes. They are, insurance carriers love them because it takes the risk away from the employees that are there on site, and it puts it in the safe. Now, yes, I historically been an operator 6 years, and I understand the nuances that businesses deal with from a cash management standpoint, smart safes, you name it, everything, cash receipts. And the smart safes are phenomenal. I mean, it takes a lot of stress off the operator and the owners, but also the insurance carriers look at it favorably, and you get to negotiate your insurance rates. And again, having a broker that knows that, you can negotiate that with the carriers. Well, I'm safer than 90% of the operators out there having the smart safe. It's keeping our facility safer.
So that's interesting. So if somebody comes to you and they have a smart safe, you're able to negotiate lower, what part of the insurance policy does that end up helping with?
So that would be on, we insure cash on some of our cargo stuff, but also they're on site. We insure when cash is at the facility, you have inventory coverage, and you also have cash coverage. Now, it's very important because 90% of these policies have safe and vault warranties. Now, what does that entail? Well, each carrier is different. How is the vault room built? Does it have wire mesh? Is it concrete? Is it a safe that's 800 pounds with an hour fire rating? Those things are very important when underwriting the policies, because if it's under 800 pounds, well, it better be bolted to the ground. You better have pictures of it. You better have it in the event of a claim. They're going to want to see those things. Now, Smart Safe, it's obviously some of them aren't as big as 800 pounds with an hour fire rating, but how it's structured, how it's anchored to the floor, all those things come into play from the
Yeah.
insurance negotiation standpoint, where we've been able to remove those warranties. Say you're in a warehouse and you have a facility with everything on pallets in your distribution center. Well, the distribution center is built with masonry block. That meets the definition of a vault, but the whole facility is going to meet the definition. So we've been able to get inventory covered that way. So it's just very important to understand the business you're underwriting as a broker.
I'm glad that came up. So Corey, you just recently changed insurance companies. Can you talk about Symphony Grow and kind of why you made the switch? Because you had a great cannabis program, a portfolio of companies on the other one, but that was a pretty big decision for you. So talk to us about Symphony Grow. That's a new company that we're aware of.
Yeah, Symphony Risk Solutions is our company. Symphony Grow is our business within Symphony Risk. So Symphony Grow specializes in cannabis operators all across the country. We have hundreds of them, whether it's private or public, small to large. We don't discriminate on size. And that's what we do in Symphony Grow. Historically, I was at another firm and I built that cannabis practice, phenomenal firm, although my focus was in cannabis and I wanted to build it the way I thought was best. And Symphony was the way to go with cannabis operators in mind, because historically I was one. And I think that's a huge differentiator, because not only do we bring the insurance side of it, that professionalism, but I bring the operator standpoint to the table.
I think that has to be, you have to be like a small percentage of people who can claim both sides of that. So by changing, do you have now access to additional products for your clients? And what, like from a customer standpoint, what do they get from joining you?
Great question. We have all the carriers we had historically. So most people have the normal carriers out there, whether that's Safe Herb, CanGen, you name it. Those are some of the larger companies out there. A lot of folks have those appointments. We have those appointments direct, so we don't go through wholesalers. We access them direct. We also have captives, which a big focus of mine is captives, because you have...
Tell us what that means, because that sounds like insurance lingo.
Yeah, a captive is a program where you as the operator become part owner of the insurance company and carrier. So we're able to tailor those policies and build those policies specifically for the operators. Now, I guarantee you, if you did a poll of every customer you have, how many people have suffered from a claim, and then that breaks out in workers' comp, cyber liability, products liability, product recall, all the different ones, it's going to be a very, very low ratio from claims. Now, what a captive is, since you get to own some of that, you can get dividends back to you as the operator, which you can use towards bonuses to your employees. You can use towards the next year's premiums. And there is well over a 60% margin in profitability in captives, as long as it's ran right and it's understood by the operators. Because what happens is the operators take a more safety approach into their day-to-day operations because of them owning some of this insurance.
Because they're part owner. Interesting. Okay. So Bruce, can you talk a little bit about BTA? I mean, I know you've been providing tax accounting and other services for many years. You can tell us how many, but maybe just touch on some of the other services that BTA provides to your clients.
Sure, thank you. So the genesis of this, I think you'll get a kick out of as well, which is that I have a son, Tom, who also runs in the business with me, and he started about 30 of the original 100 dispensaries in the 2005, 6, 7 timeframe in Los Angeles. And so he was working in our accounting firm, doing a lot of IT things and so forth. And I just said, go just do that stuff. I don't need to be involved. And so then it came around to 2018 and he said, what do you think, Dad? You want to jump in? I go, well, I'm not sure what we're jumping into. And he goes, well, we figured out that CPAs can deal with legal stuff and it's recreationally legal, so on and so forth. So what do you think? And I said, well, give it a whirl. And so I have experience with a national firm and I've experience with local firms. And so we thought, well, let's go ahead and do it. And so as it turns out, we were kind of a local firm that understood cannabis and we went after it. And so from that standpoint, we continue to service the industry. The big things that we talk about are accounting services, audit services, but primarily state and local, where we have done a couple of IRS things, which were pretty fascinating, but generally it's state and local things that we take care of. And then we do a lot of systems work, which is figuring out what the company needs in order to have their accounting systems work correctly. We'll put in the accounting platform. We'll assist with the connectivity to Metric, the POS systems, things of that nature. And then we do assist with compliance, although we found that some people do better than us on it. And then we do a lot of CFO things where we don't give people a standard, this is what a CFO should do. We just say, take a look at our website, pick a few things, and then let's decide what our timetable is to be able to do that offering. And so it's worked out nicely. We thought, my God, we're in Los Angeles, the Mecca capital of the world, and so forth. And then we found out that when we joined a couple of national organizations, some skill sets of ours were transportable. So now I'm dealing in about 25 states.
Nice.
I provide the tax back end for some CPAs and or bookkeepers that are not doing tax stuff. And then I assist with the CFO kinds of things as well. So those are the two transportable things. We have still a bulk of our clients are in California, but we really are amazing to be out of the state as well.
Thank you for that. All right, so Corey, so you started off by mentioning the recent news around the cyber issue with Stitzy. I don't know what the details are around that, but can you just talk in general? Because I know we're all online, we're definitely, Greenbax is all a digital workforce, if you will. So I think about this stuff all the time when we're developing our products. We have somebody that is looking to make sure that our systems are as secure as possible, but stuff still happens. So can you talk about what that looks like from the operator's standpoint? How does somebody protect themselves? I mean, I know insurance is there, but there's got to be other components to it. What can you help us all understand?
Yeah, so cyber liability, when you hear that term, it's so broad, but one that resonates with a lot of folks is social engineering or phishing, where somebody might get an email and say, hey, Carol, I can't talk right now, but can you send $20,000 or whatever? And most people pick up the phone, will verify it's fake or not. But, more often than not that we see social engineering happening and folks are sending money and that's what's happening. Now, what happens to the business owner? Well, if you get hacked and there's a breach and there's personal data for folks, whether it's driver's license, medical information, whatever it may be, you as the business owner have an obligation that you have to notify all those customers and provide credit monitoring and a few other things that have to be involved. So there's a checklist that you should be following if something were to happen. And I'm happy to send that around as well for folks and for businesses. And that's just not cannabis. That's every business that you have to follow those recommendations. Well, in the event of being breached. So most people think, well, I'll never get hacked. It's not an issue. Well, if you have a POS system or you have some sort of system at a retail shop, well, you are actually not responsible. The POS companies is not going to take on that liability. It's you as the operator. So you would be responsible. And that's the most common theme that I see is, no, the POS does that. We're not responsible. No, you guys are as the business owner. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah, it's very important. Just like I'm sure everybody heard a few years back, I think 5 years ago, big one, put it on the map, was when Target got breached. Well, when Target got breached, it was breached with the HVAC contractor that was there working on HVAC stuff, and that breached everything in the system. So everybody in there got dragged into that. So that same thing with the cannabis businesses. It could be a payroll provider. It could be,
Sure.
you know, an insurance thing. You need to make sure it's all set up, logging in to pay through your premium finance. Everything's online now. It's just for a policy that's pretty inexpensive. I'd say a small operator is $5,000 to $8,000 a year for cyber liability. It's worth it for $1 million in coverage. Some are more, some are less. Every account is different, but cyber is a big one. It's
Yeah.
coming. It's not
Yeah.
going away. It's better to get out in front of it.
You know, it's interesting. So for those of you that are our banking customers, one of the things that I know might drive you crazy is if you put a wire request into Greenbacks, we're going to call and verify that you have requested that wire. Because I'll tell you a story about 5 years ago, and it's exactly what Corey was talking about, this phishing. And we received an email that at the time, one of our compliance folks saw the email and knew something. It didn't look like it was coming from somebody that she often got emails from, and there was just something about the email that didn't look right. And the body of the email said, "Could you please call this number? I need to send a wire." So the compliance specialist called the number, and the person identified themselves as from the from name in the email, but she knew this guy's voice, and it wasn't his voice. And so she asked a few more questions, and it was, it was partly detective work, but also just her gut that something wasn't right about this. So she realized by checking banking records that the phone number that they had provided was not the number that we had for what in banking is called the control prong, or the owner of the account. So she called the owner of the account, who this person was impersonating, and of course found out that they had not ordered the wire. And that wire, if my memory is correct, was like $400,000, some crazy amount of money that easily could have been sent. And we've all read stories like that. So I say that as we take extra precaution because we are in this digital world. And even though, our wire form is an online form, we still go and make sure that the control prong, the owner of the account, or someone that they've given permission to order wires, has in fact ordered it. So if you get that phone call, don't let it irritate you. Just be glad that we're watching out for you, is what I would say.
And Carol, that's a good point. The insurance companies, when you fill out an application, it becomes part of the policy. And some of those applications ask, do you verify before you send a wire? Do you have two-factor authentication? Do you have endpoint detection protection? Things like that. And if you don't, and something happens, they're not going to cover. So it's very important that you have that list of items you're supposed to have to protect your company as well.
And so, Corey, is part of the service from you, like, are there different checklists for all kind of these categories? I don't know if that's the right terminology, but the different things that you've mentioned that, operators really should be considering from an insurance perspective?
So every line of coverage is different. There's applications put together for each line of coverage. So what I recommend everybody is sit down with the broker, have an open dialogue meeting and a conversation of what's taking place. I personally go to every account's workplace. I want to see what's taking place. I want to see what the facility looks like. And just that triggers questions, and it triggers that open conversation with the client. Because I'll give you another example. I went to a grow facility. They didn't bring this up on the call, but as I went there, they have an outsourced technology that controls the temperatures, the water, the timelines, the humidifiers, everything in their process. Well, what happens if those go down? What does your risk transfer agreement look like between you and the cultivator and that tech solution? Well, what it came down to was we went back to that company and had them put tech E&O in place that protected the cultivator. So the cultivator didn't pay for it, but the tech company put it in place in the event something happened to our cultivator's process.
Wow.
it's on the tech company. So it's all
Wow.
about transferring that risk and having those conversations with the operator. So again, every operator is different, every risk is
Sure.
different, but it's imperative to understand what you're underwriting on these operators.
So that's interesting. So you do a personal site. We do site visits. We do them virtually now. That was one of the gifts of COVID, I guess. And it also allows us to serve lots of customers across the country. But what a difference to actually be on site. I imagine you see stuff all the time that maybe an operator didn't even know it was possible to transfer the risk as you just described.
Yeah, absolutely. And cannabis industry has intrigued me forever. And they're some of the most creative people that I feel. And I believe all these folks, there's some creative there that we can bring a better risk management program together for these operators. I mean, some of these facilities are some of the best facilities built in the last decade that people don't understand. But
Yeah.
when you go and you see some of these facilities with their exhaust systems, and
Oh, it's amazing.
it's amazing. And I
Yeah.
think those stories need to be told to the underwriters, and understand what you're telling these underwriters is very important. It's not just transactional and pushing paper.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that. So Bruce, I noticed when you were talking about our mutual client now that you mentioned you set them up with QuickBooks Desktop. We track because we require P&Ls from our customers. And so we track which system it's coming from. And over the course of the last 7 years of providing banking services to cannabis operators, I would say 99% of our customers use some form of QuickBooks. A few of them use Sage, and I've seen a couple of the larger ones might use more of an enterprise level one. But QuickBooks seems to be the one that most of them use. And so it sounds like, since that's what you recommended to him, that works for your business as well. What's the determination between a desktop versus an online version of desktop of QuickBooks? Why did you make that recommendation to our client?
Oh, okay, great question. So Intuit puts money into whatever they can promote for that particular product. So therefore, QBO, QuickBooks Online, came about, geez, I don't know, 15 plus years ago. Started out as a service-based deal. It was a lot of this, oh, you're self-employed, you're a solopreneur, so therefore that's what you should use. What's happened is that Intuit, even to this day, anything that touches the payment systems, banking systems, whatever, they don't want to be involved with it because they're a fancy public company and they have their nose in the air and so forth. And so therefore they're really stodgy about that. But so therefore they don't even promote cannabis. I mean, nothing. And they've, even in the past year, they've shut off a couple of accounts that are in cannabis. But so long as you don't have something that touches the Federal Reserve System, then people will gravitate towards QuickBooks. QuickBooks Online is easy because you can get it downloaded onto your computer. It takes about 10-15 minutes to really put your first entry in, so on and so forth. The problem is it's the genesis of it is service-based, and the problem with the cannabis business is it's an inventory-based arrangement. Little by little, QBO will evolve that direction, but yet QuickBooks Desktop has been around since 2006. And so therefore, it has the ability to have multiple inventory locations. You can have a stocking location, you can have a returns location, you can have all the basic elements of an inventory system to include kitting arrangements or bills of material, all those things that you equate towards inventory, and also multiple companies. And so therefore, with our mutual client, then it's an inventory company for which I was able to explain to him why. And then he's just gone to town on this bill of materials thing. So therefore he's super smart with that. We're able to have reporting which will combine multiple companies and so forth. And so for larger clients, that's the direction I go.
Okay.
Little clients can have whatever they want, and I'll put up with whatever they have, and it's okay because it's really easy to get to. There's access to it, blah blah blah. But just remember that you could be compromised. Back to insurance things, you'd be compromised with a QBO with a bad employee somewhere, and they're into your system. Whereas QuickBooks Desktop, you have to have it on your own computer or server. Unless you allow somebody in, it doesn't happen. And with regards to auditing, that's the other thing which is quite interesting, where IRS still talks a game about auditing, and they still don't do much. But from a standpoint of what you want to give them or what you want to offer them, with QBO, it's like all or nothing. I mean, there you go, log in and there's everything. With regards to desktop, you can basically, I did this several years ago, and I just said, okay, so pretend my company is not using QuickBooks. Pretend that they're on SAP, and it's a global system, and they've got 500 users on it. What would you ask for? And they say, well, gosh, I guess we'd want to get a couple of reports out for this and that. And for this is a real story. I said to the auditor, well, come to my office, we'll run those reports right now. And so basically anything they wanted, I ran a report for them. Did they get into QuickBooks? Not at all. So therefore there's additional protection, not only from the outside, but also from IRS as well.
All right, well, thank you. So it's interesting, you mentioned that QuickBooks Intuit doesn't really support cannabis. And so they have a payment button, they can invoice, but if you're a cannabis company and you try to do that, they're not going to process it. And I think, that was part of the genesis when we realized that. We had a customer request. So when we developed Merchant Pay, our first strategy was really as an integrated solution for the point of sale companies. We had a customer come along who wanted the ability to invoice, right? And so that's what QuickBooks doesn't allow you to do, and that's what Lauren was talking about, that B2B. So whether that's somebody that has a reoccurring subscription, we see that as a use of it. We recently had a conversation with a landlord who wants to use it to get rent payments instead of having to process checks. So there's multiple uses for it, and Greenbacks, we're just trying. We are always sort of listening for what do our customers need. And in this particular case, the timing was really good on the Merchant Pay product, that we could add that as part of the feature set to it, and it's getting some traction. So I think we have found something that will be useful to our operators as well.
Well, and to your credit, Carol, I go back a long ways with technology, and I've always had a developer kind of in my back pocket that could do this to this and attach to this and so forth. And after we had our initial discussion a few months ago, I went to my developer and I said, I can't even believe this. Here's a bank that's identified this payment situation, and they developed it in-house. And I said, that's unheard of in the industry. Usually it's like, what can I find to bolt on? And then you've got two companies to do it because it didn't work for this or that or whatever. So, I mean, that was an early indicator about the ability of Greenbacks and where you really have your head pointed for the company, which is, let's see what our next hurdle is going forward, and not let's just not be comfortable with, oh yeah, we're just a bank and we can do DDA deposits,
Yeah. Honestly, I mean, we had really good partner in the creation of Merchant Pay. We've been talking to one of the largest point of sale companies in the country, and we partnered with them on kind of from a customer, what did their customers need. And then I was incredibly fortunate to hire Lauren, because Lauren had built a payment solution. She was a customer of mine at North Bay Credit Union, and we processed those payments through her startup. when she wound that up, I grabbed her as fast as I could. And I will tell you, her timing could not have been better because she really brought both, it is kind of like what Corey does, both that operator expertise, payments knowledge, being able to look at, banking knowledge, being able to look at it, that 360. And what I've been told, and I'm not the expert here, but I will tell you that we've shown it to so many of our partners, our referral partners, our point of sale companies, other industry uses of it. And the feedback that we get is that the APIs are easy to integrate. The UI, the UX, what people see and use if it's not integrated is really clean and intuitive and easy. And then the reporting that comes off of it. So we feel like, there's somebody will come along with something else we should add. And we're completely, to your point, Bruce, because we have built it, it's ours. We can respond to those kinds of requests. And so that's, we didn't intend to become a development shop, but we had kind of a bad experience of a previous technology partner. We really didn't want anybody ever to own anything that we wanted to own it ourselves and be able to protect ourselves and our customers for whatever we develop. And so, yeah, we're really excited. We launched it fourth quarter of last year. And like I said, we've got good momentum going. Lauren, is there anything that you want to add to what I've said about Merchant Pay? Anything I didn't hit on?
No, I love how you described it. The only thing I wanted to add about just this call and our partners is that I'm hoping the listeners have heard this as well, but in conversations that I've been a part of with Corey and Bruce, all of the partners I think that Greenbax brings in, and you always say that's kind of the marketplace of it, is that you're very much hands-on partners. And I think anybody that works with you is very lucky to find you because you have such a great customized, unique approach with each client. And you seem very invested in their success, which I think is rare. So I'm definitely thankful to be a part of this and have met you both.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Lauren. I agree. We're pretty selective of who we bring into our marketplace, but we really do try to find professionals that we don't have the expertise, but we want to be able to grow our marketplace with folks like Corey and Bruce who can actually provide valuable services and help protect our operators. I mean, we're all in this together, right? This industry has been around a long time, but it's pretty new in kind of a more, on the legitimate side and getting all the controls in place and making sure that we're all using systems and that really do support our business and help our operators grow. So I am grateful to both of you, to all three of you actually. So thanks for being here today. All right, we're gonna wrap up. And so I didn't see any questions. If anybody does have questions after this, I'm gonna put up on the screen right now just a quick. I'm gonna share my screen and you can see what's next. And so this is what's gonna happen. We're going to send you an email with a link for the recording of this webinar. We will send you contact information for Greenbax and Merchant Pay, for Bruce and BTA, for Corey and Symphony Grow, and then a schedule of upcoming seminars and webinars. So if there's anything that you would like us to cover in the next one, would you please feel free to send us an email. Let us know if there's something that you thought of a question afterwards, or you would like to make sure that we cover next time. We would really appreciate that opportunity to make sure that we've got you covered. And so I'm going to wrap up by just saying, I really want to send a big thank you to Corey and Bruce and Lauren for sharing your expertise and actionable insights. We've covered a lot of ground. So thank you to all of you that joined us today. We hope that you've gotten some value, maybe some ideas about things that you need to do in your own businesses to make sure that you are protected, both from all your tax stuff ready and that you've got that your company is covered with the right insurance. And I know that both Corey and Bruce would be more than happy to set up a introductory call and just get to know you, ask you some questions about your business, and then you can decide if their services can help you grow your business as well. So I wish you all a very